All right, we're going to take a look at the First Amendment freedom of speech and what's covered, what's not covered, how you're protected, how you're not protected. Okay, should speech be limited? Who can limit it? So let's continue. Okay, so free speech, as a general idea, is your freedom or liberty to speak about your opinions without the government restricting them. Now, this is important to remember because kids will often say, oh, well, my teacher said I couldn't say this, or my job fired me for blasting them on social media. That's a private company. We're talking about the government, okay? So two types of speech that we're going to look at. Pure speech, okay, which is either spoken or written. So a lot of this is online nowadays, or things that you're verbally saying. So whether it's written or spoken or symbolic speech. So if you're trying to protest American involvement and you want to burn the American flag, that is symbolic speech. Or sometimes this is called expressive speech. So you're not, verbally saying anything. You're doing something to represent your ideas. Okay. So why do we have this freedom? I mean, it's the second freedom mentioned in the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights, and really it's to allow the minority to speak. Okay, so whether it's an opinion that is very controversial, even if one person holds it, they still have that right to hold that opinion. Okay, because we've seen this in our country. Minority positions have turned into majority positions, and regardless of where you're at, when the government starts censoring what you can say, that creates issues. So the whole idea is to protect unpopular views, okay, and be allowed to criticize the government. All right, so lots of different communications are protected, whether it's speech or clothing or art. The internet, things get a little bit crazy. Face-to-face, all these ways that people communicate in the 21st century. Okay. Now, this quote, again, this idea of freedom of speech goes back to the Enlightenment, 1700s. And you think about this quote from an Enlightenment thinker, Voltaire: I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. So again, you don't have to agree with what people say, but when the government starts to get involved and tell you what you can't say, that creates issues with the First Amendment. Okay, so there are times that the government can limit what you say. Now again, kids say, oh, I got freedom of speech. Well, the government can and has stepped in, and the courts have sided with the government in a lot of different cases. Okay, so what's referred to as the clear and present danger rule, you do not have a freedom to provoke a riot. So this comes from a Supreme Court case around World War I, United States versus Schenck. And basically the Supreme Court Chief Justice, said you can't shout fire in a theater and cause a panic. You can't, go into an airport and say, oh, there's a bomb in my bag, and then you create panic and say, ha ha, First Amendment, suckers. You didn't know something? You're not protected. Okay, so if your speech provokes a riot, that is not covered, and the Supreme Court has clarified this. So again, Congress is trying to prevent clear and present danger, so they have a right to limit speech if it's going to cause public panic. Okay, overthrowing the government. Okay. Again, if you're being, this is called seditious speech. So if you're saying something that's going to immediately lead to trying to overthrow the government, that can be limited. Now again, it gets gray area. You wear a shirt that says, Viva la Revolution. Is that seditious? No, it's kind of abstract. This really comes down to what happens because of your speech. Okay. Fighting words is something in the United States. If your speech is going to incite violence, you are not protected. Okay, So this is different from hate speech. Now, hate speech as an idea or as a legal concept is not something in the United States. Okay, so people say, oh, that's hate speech. That's not a thing in the U.S. Fighting words is. So if you're inciting violence from a target, you're just badgering them, and then it leads to violence, you can be held accountable. So again, you have to know that you can and will be held accountable for things you say, even though we have the First Amendment. Okay. Defamation. So if you are spreading lies that you know are incorrect to hurt a person's character, you can be held accountable. Now this one, we watched a video in class. You had this rally, this kid with a Make America Great hat on, and this Native American, and the Washington Post, put out this news report that this kid was, taunting him and, was riling up, and came out that was not true. And this family, this kid, Nick Sandman, sued the Washington Post for $250 million on a defamation charge. So if you know something is incorrect and you know it's a lie and you do it anyway to hurt a person's character, you can be held accountable. Okay, this is done through either slander when you speak or libel when you're printing lies. Okay, so I always remember slander is S, that's spoken, libel, that's printing. Okay, so this gets tricky with the internet. Now, what about public officials? Okay, so people talk smack about the president all the time, Obama and Trump. Okay, they have a much harder case to make. So private individuals, you and I have much more protection. This happened. If Trump tweets at me and starts to attack me, I have a better case of defamation versus if I or someone tweets at Trump. Okay, he's a public figure. I am not. You have to really prove that they suffered damage. The term is actual malice, with the intent to harm the individual. So you have to say something. You have to prove that you knew it was false. That you prove that you were trying to cause harm. They have to prove that there was harm. It's much harder. So public officials, because kids always say, man, what about, the National Enquirer, and they're talking smack about Kanye and Kim and Obama and Trump, and it's like, yeah, they're public officials. That's kind of comes with the territory. Okay, so that's going to wrap up, and we'll do more activities in class. We'll come back and look at press, assembly, and petition. All right, see you guys.